All right, we will call the May 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Pinellas County Charter Review Commission to order. My name is Brian Ongst. I have the pleasure of serving as the chair, and I was appointed by Commissioner Chris LaBala. We will start with introductions to my right with my vice chair.
Hi, my name is Dr. Lindsay Grove. I am a public at large citizen appointee and vice chair.
Chloe Berryman, counsel for the CRC.
Wade Vos, General Counsel for the CRC.
I'm sorry about that. Nick DeSegli, Pinellas Delegation Appointee.
Dave Eggers, County Commissioner representing the County Commission.
Rob Pasovic, appointed by Commissioner Eggers.
Jim Milliken, a public at large, appointed by Commissioner Peters.
Doug Thomas, a CRC facilitator.
Ashley Overend, appointed by Commissioner Brian Scott.
Tom Steck, appointed by Commissioner Justice.
Mark Strickland, appointed by Janet Long.
Anne Marie Brooks, Commissioner Madeira Beach, Municipal Elected Official Appointee.
Mike Twitty, Property Appraiser, Constitutional Officer Appointee.
All right, very good. Thank you all for being with us tonight. We also have Commissioner Terry Lipsey Scott, who's joining us via Zoom. I don't know, Commissioner Scott, if you want to test out your mute button to see if it works.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Terry Lipsey Scott, appointee of Commissioner Renee Flowers. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Commissioner. And if you need to say anything, just raise your hand in Zoom or just go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know, and we'll get with you, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. Let's go to public comment. We have Mr. David Ballard Geddes Jr. for public comment. Mr. Ballard Geddes, when you get situated, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. My name is David Ballard Geddes Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. Our current United States Constitution is chartered on a maritime contrivance in Article 3, Section 2, stating deaf to the voice of justice and consequenity as written in the Declaration of Independence. Such maritime contrivance, deaf to the voice of justice, deaf to consequenity, is assailed as a ship of war during peacetime in Article 1, Section 10, intent, again, on capturing both land and water in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, in its piracy, fortifying imposts 10 miles square in parameter in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, in becoming the new seat of government, establishing individual, independent, despotic water jurisdictions under the 14th Amendment, intent on taking liberty, property, and life of the Christian population in its process as deduced from the Reclaimed Water Variance application. The Indians tax-free in the 14th Amendment, warning the legislation of the British Brethren not to extend their unwarranted water jurisdiction over them, sadly, are the tribes of Israel and are declaring to be working as mercenaries for the British here to eat us out of our subsistence, to complete perfidy and works of death, to destroy all ages and conditions, intent on vanquishing Christianity, based on Federalist Paper 2, stating that they are transported here to indirectly undermine that which cannot be directly overthrown. Multi-generationally propagated in his farewell address, George Washington states that we, Christians, are being given a useful lesson on our heads, seen as a useful art in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, claiming to be of greatest rankness and truly one's worst enemy. Our current political structure is precursored and navigated on a constitutive act of high seas rebellion, and I protest such political constitution in its inception. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else for public comment? I don't see anyone else in the room or on Zoom. So we will now move on to our first order of business, which is Do we have minutes to approve, by the way? I didn't see that on here. Or is that going to come?
They were not prepared. We had a quick turnaround from this meeting, so they needed a little more time to finish those, so they'll be on our next meeting.
Okay, no worries. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. We'll move to item 4, new business, and this is our presentations on the form of government options. This is our last major topic for consideration in the charter review that we have conducted over the last better part of a year. We are very fortunate to be joined by two outstanding public servants who have many, many years of distinguished service. We have Mayor Bob Buckhorn here. Mayor Buckhorn is the Executive Vice President and Principal of the U.S. Cities Practice for Shoemaker Advisors of Florida. He has a long history of distinguished service, including as the mayor of Tampa from 2011 to 2019, with many, many accomplishments going from the Great Recession to the unprecedented success that we now see, particularly, well, all over Tampa, to be honest. It is a shining beacon of government, in my opinion, and we're very blessed to be joined by him tonight. We also have with us Pam Brangraccio. Pam was the county manager for Broward County. She was the county manager for Bay County. She was the city manager for Safety Harbor, city manager for New Smyrna Beach, and she was the assistant city manager for West Palm Beach and assistant county manager for Collier County and Charlotte County, and she is a senior advisor for the International City Managers Association, and she is a Pinellas County resident. So Pam, I couldn't ask for two better folks to come and give us your perspectives on the various options. Of course, there are many, many, many different varieties and options here. So I don't know if Mr. Thomas, if you want to start us off, or if we just want to invite Mayor Buckhorn up and then Manager Brangraccio up.
Sure. Mayor Buckhorn, if you want to come up, and I can just start to unpack where we're at this evening. As Chairman Ongst has mentioned, this is the last topic that was yet to be unpacked, so to speak, by this group. And so as we were brainstorming to try to determine how to best present some options and alternatives, we thought at our last meeting, General Counsel Vose had prepared a background material memorandum that indicated the various types of charters and the different forms of government that were currently in operation, both at the county level as well as at city levels. And as we were trying to figure out with that as background information, we thought it'd be helpful if we could also have some speakers that have lived and worked in both of those types of governments and did some brainstorming. So we're really pleased to have the two speakers that we have this evening. I had an opportunity to work with Mayor Buckhorn when I was in city management over in the city of Lakeland. We worked together on some high-speed rail transition issues along the I-4, so it was good to reconnect with him as well. And so he graciously, when we reached out to him, said, hey, we're looking for a speaker that knows the area, knows the landscape, thought that he might be an exceptional speaker to address the topic this evening, and he did not have much time to prepare. This was only about a week and a half ago we came together, so we do appreciate his ability to flex his schedule to be here this evening. So with that, I will be glad to turn it over to Mayor Buckhorn.
Good. Doug, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. It's good to be here. Thank you for being such a great partner to my city over the last, certainly the 8 years that I served as mayor. We could not have succeeded to the extent that we did without the regional partners that we had. And so for all of you that were involved, thank you. It was an amazing journey coming out of that recession to what we see now in the Tampa Bay area as one of the hottest real estate markets in America and a destination for the best and the brightest. And so to all of you that were involved in that, thank you. My perspective is as an unabashed fan of a strong mayor form of government. I was fortunate enough in the city of Tampa, which has one of the strongest mayor forms of government in the country, to serve in multiple capacities. So I have sat on a number of sides of this fence. I started out as the assistant to the mayor in 1987, served 8 years with Sandy Friedman, served on the city council on the legislative branch for 8 years, and then was elected to the office of mayor in 2011. Our form of government perhaps is a little bit unique in terms of the authority vested in that office. Virtually everything, with the exception of land use and zoning and final approval of the budget, is vested in the strong chief executive under our form of government. 4,500 employees, a $2 billion budget. You are, in essence, the CEO of a large corporation. The mayor of Tampa does not sit on the city council. There is no city manager. You are in charge. And that gives you the ability to really shape and to drive a narrative and to drive a community and to rally a community behind your vision. It is unequaled, I would suggest, in terms of the ability to lead a community and to allow a community, or in my case, a city, to speak with one voice. They elected you on whatever plans that you may have had. They expect you to lead. You have the authority to manage the government in a way that you can execute those plans. You can move money, you can move bodies, you can move departments. You can drive that engine, if you will, towards whatever that vision is that you have espoused during the course of a campaign or during the course of your time in office. It is a very, very powerful position. Tampa has been lucky. We've had a succession of good mayors who were the right people at the right time for our community. The downside to a strong mayor form of government is if you get a bad one, it can be really bad. And we all recognize that. We have been fortunate that we have not had that occur to us. But I would suggest to you that our ability and what you have seen in Tampa over the last 20 years is a outgrowth of that strong mayor form of government. Because the community understood exactly where we were going. The community's hopes and aspirations were embodied in that mayor. Our community took on the personality of the mayor. We were able to drive through that recession, to lead the community out of that darkness, to lay out a plan for what we saw at the end of that tunnel when we knew there would be light, to rally the city to believe in it to the point where it became part of their DNA. And I think, and this is all my personal opinion, I think that can only be done if you have somebody in charge. Now, that doesn't take away from the ability of city managers to actually run things. It doesn't take away from the ability of legislative bodies in conjunction with city managers or county managers to execute and to deliver services. But I would suggest to you that the ability to move a community light years forward, there has to be somebody in charge. The community needs to know who that person is. They can hold that person accountable every 4 years if they choose to. But the amorphous mass that is local government, in the absence of a singular CEO, they don't know who to blame. They don't know who to give credit to. It is hard for a government to create a unified vision if you have multiple voices. In the city of Tampa, there is one voice. And that voice is the mayor. That pulpit that that mayor has is probably the largest in the Bay Area. When that mayor speaks, people pay attention. But that authority vested in an office gives you the ability to do things that it would be far more difficult in a city manager form of government. I've heard when this debate comes up that it's adding another layer of government. No. When you're the mayor, you have the ability to eliminate layers of government. You have the ability to shrink the size of government. You have the ability to change the direction of government. You don't necessarily have to ask permission. You just do it. Our ability to get out of that recession was predicated upon people believing in that person and rallying behind that person. So while a strong mayor is not perfect for every situation or every community, obviously in some smaller communities it may not be the right choice. But I can tell you, in a rapidly growing urban area where the pressures of growth are pretty significant and the decisions that are made are significant and the amounts of money that are involved is significant, I would suggest to you that a strong mayor form of government in many of those circumstances is more responsive to the public and more appropriate for the size of the communities that we are dealing with. We've had this debate in Hillsborough County for a number of years, whether the county should go to a strong mayor form of government. We saw Orange County do it, where you have the mayor of the city of Orlando and you have a mayor in Orange County. We've seen it done in other major urban areas around the state. It can work. You know, there are challenges involved in it, but I can tell you, having been on the city council side where I chafed in a strong mayor form of government, to being the mayor, I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't. And we could not, I can tell you with certainty, Tampa could not have moved as fast and as far as it did without having one person at the helm with the power vested in that office to be able to get things done. That doesn't mean there isn't a role for city council. There is a role. They are the front lines to the community, and they deal with most of the citizen complaints and the citizen concerns. But there's got to be somebody in charge at top, and the voters need to know who's in charge and who they can hold responsible. I have always believed that in large metropolitan areas, it is the best form of government, the most responsive form of government, the government that can shape and move a community in a direction, and the office that can lead a community through difficult times, whether it's hurricanes, serial killers, I mean, you name it. They look to the mayor to take comfort, to take direction, to be inspired, to be comforted. That can only be done in the form of a mayor, strong mayor. So for us, it works. It's worked for 40 plus years. Periodically, you have city councils that will try and nibble away at the authority of the mayor because they all wake up every day and see a mayor in the mirror. But I can tell you in terms of efficiency, in terms of the ability to drive costs down, to return an investment to the taxpayers on their investment, to make sure that the number of employees doesn't balloon, to manage departments, and to lead, that structure of government I have found to be the most responsive and the best form of government for a large, rapidly growing community. Obviously, there are differences of opinions, and I understand that, and I respect that. And it's not right for everybody. For Tampa, it was the right decision 40 years ago, and Governor Martinez was the first mayor that really benefited from the strong mayor form of government. And I think you have seen those other communities around the state move in that direction, and I think it's worth your consideration, not without its challenges, not without its political upheaval, but at the end of the day, in my opinion, it is the most efficient and the most responsive form of government that you can have. So, take it from one washed-up mayor, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. I've lived it, and I enjoyed it. I wouldn't have done that job in any other form, and I think you can see the results in both St. Petersburg and in Tampa in terms of how far they have moved as communities by virtue of having somebody in charge, whether it was Rick Baker, who transformed St. Petersburg, to what we've experienced under a succession of good mayors in Tampa. Yeah.
Mayor,
Chairman?
thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. This was very short notice, by the way, so I can tell you're very passionate about this and your life experience and all the success that you've achieved, along with all of the people you worked with in Tampa and throughout the state and throughout the region. I think probably best we can either have questions for Mayor Buckhorn now or save them for both, but I'd say probably best if you have questions for Mayor Buckhorn to ask them now. That would probably be the most efficient way to do it. Senator DeSigley, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mayor, for being here. I appreciate your presentation. I have one question. You mentioned you didn't have a city manager, and when I talk with folks, obviously outside of this commission, about the idea of a county executive here in Pinellas County, one of the kind of pushbacks, if you will, is, well, that individual doesn't have the expertise in running government, doesn't have the expertise like in this particular case, a county administrator would. And my response to that always is, leaders know how to lead. Leaders know how to put the right people around them to be successful in that leadership. I have full confidence in the electorate, and so those have everything to do with campaigns, et cetera. But my question to you is, you mentioned you didn't have a city manager. What was your technique, your approach in putting those right people around you to make sure that you had the experts in place to help you lead the city through, coming out of the Great Recession and those specific challenges that you had as a strong mayor of Tampa?
Great question, Senator. I was fortunate because I had prepared for this moment for a long time, having been around the mayor as the assistant to the mayor, been on city council, studied mayors all over the country, seen mayors that had succeeded, seen mayors who had failed for all kinds of different reasons. So I was prepared on day one, but you could also have a situation where a business leader could emerge, get elected, and become the mayor. And you're right. Your thesis at the beginning of what your statement was absolutely true. Leaders know how to lead, and they know how to build teams, and they know how to provide guidance, and they know how to lay out a vision and articulate a vision and drive a narrative and hold people accountable within the organization. Those skills are transferable to political office. Political office has a few other dynamics that they don't have to deal with, but the fundamentals are still the same. And so for me, I didn't know everything, but I needed smarter people around me who did. And so whether it was picking a police chief or a fire chief or, development coordinator or a city attorney or a CFO, I paid them more than I was getting paid. And I made sure that they were the right people in the right slot, that they were good teammates, that they knew what they were doing, that they didn't do drama, and we were all focused on the same mission. And that mission was what I laid out during the campaign. And so I would suggest to you that it doesn't have to be a political person to be a good mayor. I mean, we saw, Mayor Bloomberg in New York or others who have come out of the political world, or, Rick Baker, who weren't politicians but were successful as mayors. So the skills are transferable. A lot of it is about building the team. And the other part of it is what folks like you and I do, which is get out and talk to the public and hear their concerns and then translate that to action. So,
Vice Chair Dr. Grove.
Thank you so much for being here, Mayor. We really appreciate it. I would love to hear your perspective, and obviously all of this is hypothetical, but, in having a strong mayor form of government at the county level, how would you anticipate that kind of collaboration between a strong mayor at the city level with a strong mayor at the county level?
Another great question. A lot of it is personalities. It shouldn't be politics, because when you're in the city building business or the county building business, there's no Democratic or Republican way to do it. We don't have the time for that. We don't have the luxury. We aren't interested in that. We're mayors. And so part of it is the personal dynamics. The other part of it is recognizing that the city of Tampa's population triples during the hours of 8 to 5, and the vast majority of those folks don't live in the city. So they're my constituents for a quarter of the day. Then they go home to the county or Pasco or wherever they live. But that ability to work together really can be magical. And the difference is you have two people who can make decisions and stand by their decisions. And so when you walk away with a fellow mayor having shaken their hand and said, okay, this is the deal, you can put faith in them that it's going to happen. But in a big county like this, where you have multiple cities, 2 large cities and smaller municipalities, it may be a little more challenging than what I had to deal with. I mean, I had Hillsborough County, and then we had Tampa, Plant City, and Temple Terrace. So I really didn't have to deal with Temple Terrace and Plant City, but I had to deal with the county. And what I found, it was very challenging for me to craft or structure a deal with the county administrator and rely on his ability to get 7 other votes to make sure it passed. That didn't always happen. He might have said something to me, we shook hands, walked away, and by the time it got to the board, it got totally changed. Having 2 strong mayors, I think, makes that process simpler. I think it makes it less complex, and I think you can move the needle in your community much better. I mean, just think about how much easier transit would be to deal with. I mean, we'll just pick an issue that we all live with every day. If you had a few less voices at the table and a common goal to resolve it and maybe to share resources and figure out how to get it done, I think we could all move much quicker, much more efficiently to a better end. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, good to see you here.
Yes, sir,
and
Commissioner.
thank you for your leadership and certainly what you were able to help us all with for the region. I think that was some good things. Two questions. First, you were starting to touch on it just a little bit. This is, I guess every county is unique in its own way. The unincorporated county represents about 29%, 28% of the population. We have 24 cities, one large city in St. Petersburg. So just your thoughts as it relates to, I mean, I hear what you're saying about large city, and I think I really feel pretty good about what you're saying about running the city of Tampa, running the city of St. Petersburg, and that kind of thing. 250,000 people in St. Petersburg, almost the size of the unincorporated county. That really you as an elected leader would only have that jurisdiction over. Your thoughts, just as it relates to 24 cities and probably a third. You know.
Yeah, certainly the difference between Hillsborough and Pinellas is stark. There are a lot more players in the mix. There are a lot more voices in the mix. There are more incorporated communities in the mix, all of whom have a separate identity and take great pride in that, and they should. So it's far more complicated here than it is on our side, where we just have, basically Temple Terrace and Plant City, and then a much larger Hillsborough County. But you have to start somewhere. And I think Pinellas is growing to the point and maturing to the point where that kind of leadership is required, and I think can facilitate your growth more expeditiously, more efficiently, under the leadership of a strong executive. I mean, I think government functions better when people know who to hold accountable, and that there is somebody who can actually make things happen, make the trains run on time, and create a vision that people can rally behind.
Thank you. Appreciate your response. The second question, you made a comment in there about it being non-political, and I certainly understand what you were saying. Were your races as mayor partisan or nonpartisan?
No, they were nonpartisan. And you know what's interesting? I would bet, maybe I'm wrong, that if you asked the average person in the city of Tampa what party I belong to, they probably couldn't tell you. Because I didn't govern as the Democratic mayor. That was not, I was happy to host the Republican National Convention because it was good for my city. Right. So, and when I say it's not partisan, I think mayors get less tangled up in that kind of stuff than others do, just because we don't have the time and the luxury for it, and we're really not interested in it. I need the help from everybody, regardless of their party label.
Yeah. So your thought would be that position would be a nonpartisan.
I think it's helpful. If I could, my party label's T for Tampa. I think it's helpful. I think the less of that stuff that you have in these elections, the better off you are. Everyone knows who they are, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. Everyone knew I was a Democrat, but I didn't run as a Democrat. And I think it's better for the system, better for the end result, to do it that way.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Steck?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I didn't follow Tampa and Hillsborough very closely, but I was wondering, was there a time when you and the county administrator had any kind of a blow-by-blow situation? How was it resolved?
I wouldn't say blow by blow. I think there were times where I was disappointed in them, and they were probably disappointed in me at some point. In Hillsborough County, the mayor tends to get all of the attention. That's just the nature of the job. The media pays attention to the mayor. Commissioners sometimes get a little frustrated with that because their budget's bigger, they represent a bigger portion of the county. But again, that singular person, that singular voice tends to command the attention of the media. So there, we had our differences for sure. I don't think they were major. I would get frustrated sometimes by, and I'll give you an example, their hesitancy to embrace mobility options for our community. Light rail and mass transit may not be something that rural East Hillsborough County needs nor wants, but in the urban core, it's something that we desperately need. And so that debate over funding and where that money should be allocated, and there were segments of our community that thought light rail was a UN plot. That's hard to reconcile. And so, because you're dealing with two very different constituencies. An urban constituency, highly dense neighborhoods, need mass transit as a mobility option, and far more rural, Hillsborough County, more conservative philosophically, who don't want anything to do with it and certainly don't want to pay for it. So there were those debates, and those are inevitable. We still don't have mass transit, so you can see where we are. But it's the inevitable conflict between rapidly growing, highly densified urban areas versus a more rural, suburban county. And you have that here in this county as well. More dense, but, you know, same issues.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have Commissioner Twitty.
Yes, I had a follow-up. Thank you for being here, Mayor.
Sure, Commissioner.
Related to the partisan or nonpartisan question that Commissioner Eggers asked. And Wade, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you mention that the latest Supreme Court guidance indicated that any elected countywide officer would have to run as partisan?
That's accurate, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little different.
That may be a moot point over here, so.
Right. I just wanted to make sure we got that point out there. Okay.
I can
make sure
tell
I was
you,
correct.
Commissioner, once they get the job, they'll figure out real quickly
Right.
that, you know, let's leave all that stuff somewhere else because we don't have the time for it.
Sure.
Commissioner Strickland.
Thank you, Mayor, for being here this evening. Can you just describe for the group, and maybe some know, but I don't, your background, how you came up in the world, your academic pedigree, and the various jobs you worked in to get to this point, and your background? It would help me understand how one becomes the mayor of Tampa. And
Took a few tries, which actually made me a better mayor. I have a degree in political science from Penn State, came to Tampa in 1982, started, and I knew I wanted to be in public service. Started volunteering in political campaigns. First one was Senator Pat Frank, who Senator probably knows. She predated him, but just started volunteering and getting involved in Tampa politics. And I ended up running the campaign of Sandy Friedman, who was on the city council, who became the mayor of Tampa in 1987. I served as her top assistant from 87 to 95. Was elected to city council in 95, reelected in 99, ran for mayor in 2003, and lost to Pam Iorio, Mark Woodard's wife. Was out in the private sector for 8 years as a partner in a big public affairs firm, came back in 2011, announced I was running for mayor. The consensus was I didn't stand a snowball's chance of winning. That was my wife who said that. I was running against Dick Greco. I was running against some legendary Tampa people, and we ended up winning, and I became the mayor in 2011. So I literally, and this is interesting, I knew where I wanted to be when I served as the assistant to the mayor because I saw how powerful that job could be, and I saw the capacity to shape and to build and to grow a city, and that was the only place out of all of the political offices that you really could write a new chapter for your community and at the end of the day have something concrete to show for it. And that was embodied in that office. And so I knew that if I was going to run for office, I wanted it to do and not to be. And when you're a mayor, you can do.
Other questions for Mayor Buckhorn? Yes, Commissioner Pasevich.
Thank you. Mayor, thanks for your insightful comments tonight. Been very helpful. Obviously, very pro. Most of your comments were pro. If you had to choose one potential watch out or one con that we would have to look out for, what would it be if there is one?
If you elect a bad one with that much power and that much authority, it can be, I don't want to say catastrophic, but it just as a good mayor in a strong government, a strong mayor form of government can move a city light years or move a county. If you get one that is not competent or taking the city in a different direction, the power is also vested in their ability to do that. And so I put my faith in the voters to be able to choose. And I think what you will see, Commissioner, in a mayor's race in particular, they know who these people are. They do their homework. It is a very different relationship with the voters than when I was on city council. Everybody knows who the mayor is. Everybody has an opinion on the mayor. Everybody knows everything about the mayor because it's a much more intimate relationship because they know that they're putting their future and their kids' future in your hands. And so I have found the voters, even when I lost, Pam Iorio was the right person at that time. The voters picked the right person. They know. They can figure it out. Now, can bad things happen on the way to Election Day? Sure, they can. But I have found, particularly in my city, the voters are very discerning about who it is they let get control of that apparatus and lead that city. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mayor Buckhorn at this time? Mayor, I just had a couple, and just as you discussed the potential pitfall of having a bad elected strong mayor, in Pinellas County particularly with 24 cities, there is a finite group of professional managers or people that are qualified to be professional managers in the United States. Many of them have masters in public administration. Many of them are ICMA certified, which is, I think, frankly, a qualification once you become a city manager to become, or a county manager to become ICMA certified if you're not already in most jurisdictions. And in Pinellas, we've had problems finding qualified candidates for the 24 cities. There are towns and cities in Pinellas County that right now have acting or temporary, or the fire chief is the city manager. And I'm not going to name them all, but there are several. And that seems to be a recurring issue. And so I wanted to get your thoughts in terms of comparing the two, and when you talk about a jurisdiction that's the size of Pinellas County, the most densely populated county in Florida with 1 million residents, how do you compare those two, the two potential pitfalls in terms of that?
You know, there are, and we've seen a lot of very, very, very competent city managers in city manager forms of governments. They are professionals. I am just of the opinion that it is difficult for a city manager to lead in that form of government. Not to drive the trains on a daily basis. I'm talking about driving a vision and driving a community and rallying a community behind a city manager, because the city manager has to keep 4 or 5 votes to keep their job. So you're not going to do anything that's going to put you one out in front of the parade because you leave that to the elected officials. Rightfully so. And the elected officials in a 7-member body, 8-member body, generally don't let one person emerge to be the de facto leader. It's just the nature of this form of government. So I think it's challenging for city manager forms of government in those communities to really move a community to a place where it could be, and to inspire the citizens to believe in that and to believe in where we're going just by virtue of the inherent shackles on their job. You know, Pinellas is very unique in terms of the number of municipalities. I'm sure there's some in Broward where you had to live for all those years, and it's a real challenge for city managers in those communities. But I still think that that voice matters, and that vision matters, and that accountability matters, and that can only be embodied in a strong chief executive that's elected.
Very good. Any other questions at this time for Mayor Buckhorn? All right.
Once again, these
Mayor,
are entirely my opinions.
of course.
Do with them what you wish.
We're very grateful for your opinions and your experience, and it was extremely edifying for me, and I'm sure for all the other commissioners. And thank you again on short notice, volunteering to come here and share your experiences. So
Sure. Happy to do it.
very grateful. Thank you.
I'm going to leave so she can refute everything I just said.
That's okay.
And by the way, she may live over here, but she's from Tampa originally, so I still managed to be able to turn her water off, so it's okay. Thank you, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, as a little background on Pam as well, I know that you had read her bio as she approaches the dais. I had an opportunity to meet with Pam when she was the FCCMA president when I first came down from Michigan to serve in Lakeland, Florida. And so I go back over 20 years now. We're all getting older in this business, I guess, at the time. But we also thought that Pam, not only as a native of the area and a resident of Pinellas County, had the unique opportunity of operating in a variety of different forms of government here in the state of Florida. So city management, strong mayor, county operations, and things of that nature. And so we thought that she would be an outstanding speaker to address kind of how that has worked from an appointed position across the different organizations she worked at as well. And she now is still working, although not as active city management, but now working as the International City County Management Association in coordinating what we call our Senior Advisor Program. And those are typically retired city managers across the country that work with cities and counties that are looking for assistance and background and trade. And if managers sometimes run into challenges, gives an opportunity to discuss those matters, but also to serve as just an advocate for the profession overall. And she was just recently at the last ICMA conference awarded one of our highest service awards, a Distinguished Service in Honor for local government professions and dedication to the advancement of city management. So with that, I'm pleased to have Pam come forward and address the group tonight as well.
Hi, I'm Pam Brancasio. That's a hard one. I am a native of Tampa. I did not live in Tampa during the time that Mayor Buckhorn was there, but I've always heard great things about his tenure. It's telling, though, that my experience as a young child was walking around Ybor City. I lived close to Ybor, and there was a mayor who I thought was a strong mayor at the time. Nick Nucio was his name. And he would walk around and hand out candy and marachas to all of the youngsters. And somewhere, I think my mother probably until the last 10 years had a photo of myself when I was 6 with Nick Nucio, who was the mayor of Tampa, and the, of course, handwritten letter and the photo. The mayors of Tampa tend to do it upright. There's no doubt about that. And I'm very proud to be a native of Tampa. But I will tell you, when it was my turn to look at a profession, because I grew up in a strong mayor city, I didn't know anything about council management form of government, nothing. I remember going into city of Tampa, and they really didn't have internships. This was late 70s, I'll date myself at the time, but going in and speaking to their CFO and interviewing them for a couple of projects for USF. But when it came time for me to do a professional internship, I had to come to Pinellas County and the city of Clearwater. So that's probably the most telling example for me at that time. Hillsborough County had been through a number of scandals. I think at least 3 commissioners had been indicted. The county administrator, of all things, I think was perhaps the witness in a number of those cases. Pincott Floyd was his name. And then, of course, Nick Nucio was beaten by a gentleman named Nip Greco, who came back. Dick Greco came back and was mayor again, probably about 15, 20 years later, and a great mayor indeed. So very proud to be from Tampa. But I think the mayor highlighted a lot of the differences between the two forms of government. I represent here as a senior advisor, International City and County Managers Association, but we have a number of members that are chief executive officers in strong mayor forms of government, that are chief financial officers. So it's not that our association represents just one form of government. I wanted to make that point. And we have seen two of our ICMA presidents, Dan Clayman, you may remember Dan, Mayor Buckhorn would have known him. Dan Clayman was the manager of Hillsborough County, who went on to be the chief executive officer for Jacksonville and Duval County and worked for the strong mayor there. A gentleman by the name of Howard Tifton was the longtime mayor of Daytona Beach, the longtime manager, and he went on to be the chief executive officer in Orange County for Glenda Hood. And it is normal, by the way, when the charters for those strong mayors are written, that there usually is a chief executive officer. That was a question that came up because it's very rare that the mayor takes on the day-to-day administration. And I think if you asked your former colleague, who's now the mayor of St. Pete, he'd probably talk to you about his chief of staff, or if they have a CAO. It's often called either in those forms of government. But there's usually someone that's still running the day-to-day. I think the mayor called it keeping the trains on time. It's really not the CAO or the county administrator's position that's affected the most in a change to a strong elected mayor. It's the commission. It's the commission that loses the shared responsibility for managing, in this case, Pinellas County. And I don't know if any of you got a chance to read the memo. Doug had asked me to just say, well, what would happen if this did move forward in Pinellas County and the voters elected to approve it? And I know our county administrator, Barry, was here, and I'm sure you know very well what his duties and responsibilities are, so I'm not going to go over that. But let's talk about that partnership that you have right now with the county chairman and the commission. The county chairman sits as a member of the county commission. The county chairman is elected annually by the county commission. It's a partnership. I do believe that it's the county chair, and I've seen this in major urban counties. I've always worked coastal, by the way. I've never done it in Lane County, I should say that. But I have seen it's often the county chair who is called on by the media, the federal officials, the state officials. They're at the press conferences. They're announcing the initiatives. But the commission is still very much involved within their districts, even though in our urban counties, you will see that county chair as often the face of the county. But with the commission, they appoint the county manager. The county manager's duties are often defined in a county ordinance. I have seen charters that are burdened down by a page of responsibilities and qualifications, but I often have seen that in the county ordinance instead. The mayor mentioned it, and I think the biggest concern that anyone in Pinellas County might have with an elected county manager, which that elected official would be if you don't get someone of the quality of the mayor who just spoke. Tampa has been very lucky, and I say that again as a Tampa native. And what happens is that person then, depending on the length of the term, which will usually be 4 years, unless there's some sort of a recall petitions, which are almost impossible, as all of you know, then that person is there for the 4 years. With a city or a county manager, that's not the case. If there's a lack of communication or a lack of directives or a major screw up anywhere within that county, and I know you've all seen this because we do have so many cities here, then that person, that chief administrative officer, is going to be terminated. And there's a contractual agreement with that person and the governing body. So you're not going to have someone who's not doing a great job in that job for 4 years or more. The only qualifications often for a strong mayor are, as the mayor said, they've been on county council, they've been on city council, they've been on legislative affairs, they've met with various officials, they're well known, but they don't have the qualifications that are often required and set out in a county manager ordinance. So I think for me, in terms of looking at what would happen in Pinellas County, it's the commission that would lose right now what is a shared responsibility with the county manager and the county chair. It's the commission that gives up the authority, where they still approve a budget ultimately in terms of the hearings that occur in September. It's the mayor that drafts that budget, obviously with a CFO or the county budget officer. But if you noticed what was handed out at the last meeting, 2 of the 3 counties, the mayor does have veto power. The mayor does move forward major legislation. The mayor does do negotiations. The county commission doesn't, quite frankly, until it's the end product. Often, one is prepared by a strong mayor's office. The city council is not aware of. And I know you all have seen that with issues that have come up in St. Petersburg. I was over in West Palm Beach when St. Petersburg elected to go strong mayor. An interesting local lore, the existing mayor, Dave Fisher was his name. He was an excellent guy. He has a financial management background and a financial advisor for local governments. He was an excellent commissioner and became an excellent mayor. He actually campaigned against the strong mayor, but the strong mayor carried and he became St. Pete's first strong mayor. But he was an excellent mayor because he had that local government background in terms of being a local government financial consultant. But you're never guaranteed that. And that's probably one of the biggest problems. The other problem that I would see, at least, and I'm like the mayor, I've worked in 40 years of local government, both counties and cities, which makes me almost as rare as a bird as being a native Floridian, by the way, in terms of having both county and city experience in Florida. But what the mayor pointed out, we're very lucky to have ethical county commissioners in Pinellas County. And the problem with an elected official, though, the difference, I should say, between an elected official where you do have the Florida Ethics Commission, and that's a route that someone can appeal to, with a appointed county manager, that county manager as an ICMA member is under the ethics code. And Mr. Thomas was kind enough to give you a copy of the 4-page ICMA ethical code. That ethical code covers everything from non-political involvement, not working for candidates, not supporting other candidates, not taking political positions. The difference, I had it described to me once as the big political P and the small political P. The managers can get involved in the small political P. I've been working very hard on bringing my 130 retired city managers across 30 states up to speed in the last year and a half that I've been the coordinator on a lot of the social issues that are really in our communities, that as retired managers 5 or 10 years ago, they might not have dealt with. That's the small political P. It's that equity in terms of representation in our communities. It's that community outreach. It's making sure that all segments of the community are represented basically in terms of the policies that move forward to the commission. But if you get the chance to look at the memo, I think what you would realize is that the difference basically, in summary again, who's being impacted the most are the individuals on a county commission who lose the current authority that they have in the Pinellas Charter. And by the way, it will be an added expense. It's not something that I put in my memo, but I think that's obvious that you're still going to have in a county of 1 million people, you're still going to want a professional, whether it's chief of staff or chief administrative officer. You know, the expense will be there. But it will not be those positions that are most impacted. It will be the county commission. Also, the chief judge, the constitutional officers, all of the negotiations that occur with regards to budgets, judicial centers, all of that will be through an elected, strong executive. And I think you saw a good example of one here earlier. But I think for me, I would just, if there are any questions on my memo, I think the major difference is, again, the code of ethics that's required, the credentialing that's required, that's now in many charters in terms of the county managers, that ability, quite frankly, if the county manager doesn't work out, for that county manager to be released, and the shift in the power that goes basically from what is currently the county commission, who appoints that chair each year and the vice chair, which would change to that strong mayor. That is moving forward the budgets. That is hiring the staff. When I was in West Palm Beach in 1991, we had a public safety issue. We had an incident with our police department that was very public and very wrong. And Palm Beach Post decided that the city of West Palm Beach needed a strong mayor. So I ended up being the staff person working with the CRC. So I recognize the difficulties of what you're all wrestling with in those changes. It was approved in West Palm Beach, and I will tell you what happened was a bloody Saturday, basically, where every department director in the city of West Palm Beach was asked to leave. So you do see a lot more turnover because the mayor is going to want their folks, as Mayor Buckhorn said, with regards to those positions. The other thing that I witnessed over in Broward County, and Broward is not a strong mayor. The mayor is still appointed by the commission, and this comes up every 10 years in Broward County, by the way, when they do the CRC. I was there the last time it came up. But the last would have been two CRCs ago, they tweaked the charter to give the mayor the responsibility to put the agenda out. And the mayor had the final say on what goes to 9 county commissioners. My job, I was hired there as county manager, was to go and I would do briefings, just like Barry probably does here as county manager. And then normally that would be the end of it. Well, not the case in Broward County. The county attorney and I would meet with the county chair, and because that individual had the charter responsibility for the final approval on what was to be heard the next day by the county chair, I saw agenda items censored for political reasons, and big P issues, not small political issues, because it's extremely partisan, obviously, in Broward County. So I like the mayor's comments about the mayor's not seeing partisan. I would hope that would be the case wherever we would go. I did not see that in Broward. So I've dealt with it, both working with CRCs. I've dealt with it both in large counties. I will tell you as a county manager, and I'm sure Barry said the same, as a county manager, you spend your entire time with your county commission and your county chair. All of them are treated equally. You represent, in Pinellas County, all 7 of them. And that's a pretty diverse group. It always is and it always will be. But you're there as their person, their administrative person, helping them basically trying to move forward. One is a collective agenda for the county. I know in Pinellas County, they do strategic planning every year with the county commission, county manager, county chair, county department directors. And then I know that the county manager is reviewed each year on how the county manager implements the policy directives, basically. It's a partnership. And that's the partnership that makes the difference in the form of government. You heard the mayor speak to the powers that the mayor, a strong mayor, an elective strong executive would have. Well, those powers come from the county commission. And I guess that's, in terms of my memo and the changes that would occur if this moved forward, that's probably the most major change. Because I do believe, as your discussions would evolve, that there would be some sort of a chief of staff or chief administrative officer. So I'm not going to tell you that I think the mayor would not hire qualified people to manage the county. That's not the point. But it's the political whim, I guess, of the voters that will determine that mayor. not a professional recruitment process with qualifications and credentialing and annual requirements, basically, in terms of ethics, in terms of the ethical code of ICMA. But are there any questions? It's very hard to dispute that Mayor Buckheim was an effective mayor. Of course he was. I'm always proud to be a Tampa native. But I think it is telling, though, that when it came to my becoming a professional administrator, I had to come to Pinellas County to find the internships within the professional administrators' offices. And that budget experience that I gained here in Pinellas County as a 22-year-old, I used in Broward County during one of the worst recessions in 2006, 2007, when the commission was asking me to make multi-millions in budget cuts. But it was a collaborative effort at the time as well with the commission. So I guess thank you to Pinellas County in that sense. You made my career.
Thank you, Manager Brangracia. We greatly appreciate you being here and sharing your experiences and your perspective and everything that you've accomplished and worked on, particularly throughout the state with the ICMA and FCCMA. And we're grateful. Thank you for also attending our last meeting. So I know you've spent a lot of time working with Doug and probably also with Administrator Burton on this. Are there any questions for Manager Brangracia at this time? Yes, Commissioner Popovich.
Thank you. I'm still struggling a little bit with how this would affect the constitutional officers. And so I assume that they would be elected as they currently are.
Absolutely.
And let's take the case of the sheriff. Wouldn't that be significantly different scenario with the sheriff's department versus what it is in Tampa and their police department? In other words, the mayor's control over that.
No, the constitutionals absolutely continue to be elected. Well, that's obviously, I think, questions that you've already covered in your CRC discussions. I don't know that you're proposing any changes there. I think what will change is the negotiations that occur every year with regards to budgets, with regards to office space, with regards to legislative issues that come up. That key person for the constitutional officers will most likely become that strong elected official. Where right now, it's most likely the county manager. I mean, in my position in Broward, I had every Thursday breakfast with the Broward County Sheriff as county manager. That's what would change, and that's really what I was referring to. I wouldn't think that there would be any change at all in the constitutional duties that are outlined by the state or in the charter.
Other questions for Manager Brangracia? All right. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate you being here and giving us the benefit of your wisdom and your experience and a lot to consider. So thank you again. Greatly appreciate it.
And thank you all for volunteering. As a Pinellas County resident now, I did choose to retire to Pinellas County. Thank you all for volunteering your time to be here and to do this too. It's very important.
Thank you. All right. So we've had our presentation. Obviously, you know, one of the things that this will dictate is how many more meetings we have. So we've budgeted some contingent meetings on if we actually are going to pursue draft language to consider for a final vote. But what I'd like to have now is a discussion on where we're all at with whether we'd like to move forward with continuing to consider this or whether you would prefer not to consider it at all moving forward. So for those of you who have thoughts, I'd like to ask you to share those thoughts at this time. Yes, Commissioner Steck.
I don't like to think of myself as a conservative person, but every time things like this come up, I keep on thinking in terms of why are we changing what seems to be working? And that is the question that comes before my mind now. There was the lengthy, oh, sorry, is that better? Sorry about that. This isn't the first time I've been told don't talk loud enough. But the IBM study that was in the materials looked like it looked at a lot of information and a lot of different scenarios, and I'm curious if there is a feeling that there are faulty structures here in this county that caused the need to think about changing the structure of it. Putting a county administrator into position, elected county administrator in a position, is a major philosophical shift. And just driving around the county, it doesn't look like the county is badly managed. Thank you, Commissioner Eggers, and for your work. So it makes me wonder why this discussion is being held, I guess.
Okay. Vice Chair Grove.
I personally would not like to move forward with this discussion. I think that given the amount of municipalities in Pinellas County, I mean, we are clearly a very unique county. Obviously, I'm biased since I live here and I love living here, but I just think that to find the right candidate to be able to navigate, facilitate, and collaborate with both the strong mayors that are here as well as city councils, city managers, as well as unzoned areas, I think would be that would be finding a needle in a haystack. On top of, I just think about the amount of resources it would take in order for somebody to run for a position like that, given also I think, experience. Pam talked so much about, what it takes to be a city manager and also, or, just managing, especially the level of government that we have here. And I just think that, we have mayoral races in this county that are, the fundraising thresholds are enormous. And the amount of people that have the capital to be able to run a campaign like that are very few. And do those people have the experience and leadership skills and, collaborative skills to be able to manage a county like this? I think it's extremely rare. So I personally would not like to move forward with this.
Okay. Senator DeSigli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank the speakers. It was incredibly helpful to kind of lay out the differences, the experiences. So thank you very much for being here. We're glad that you're a resident of Pinellas County as well. I want to kind of dive into this a little bit because if I remember correctly, I think I was the one that, brought this idea to this commission. So there's a few things that I want to kind of lay out there. Number one, this has absolutely nothing to do with our current county administrator, Barry Burton. I have a great relationship with Barry. I think Barry, from my perspective, I'm not on the commission. I'm confident that he is more than capable of doing the job that's necessary to lead Pinellas County. So I want to make that clear right off the bat. But for me, this is about accountability. This is about Pinellas County being a county that's nearly 1 million people. I believe we're the 7th largest county in the state of Florida. We certainly are the most populated county in our state. And so I think when it comes to accountability, what I mean by that is, when we talk about the budget, when we talk about a vision, when we talk about where the direction of the county is going, typically that is, yes, it's being approved by the county commission, but the county administrator has a significant role in that large responsibility in leading this county with his or her vision. And I think because of the size of our county and certainly the mayor mentioned, we're a growing county on top of it, I think that individual should be held accountable by the people. I have a faith in the electorate, and whether that's federal, state, or local, I think that here in Pinellas County, the electorate has made, some very important decisions, and they've been on the right side of it, regardless of whether or not I disagree with that. I think one thing that comes out, and again, this is about the positions in place at the time, not about the individuals at all. But I go back to the pandemic. The pandemic was a very difficult time for any leader to lead. There were some very important decisions that were made here in Pinellas County during the pandemic. I understand those challenges. I was on the phone quite frequently with Barry during that time to try to clarify what was coming out of the governor's office and that executive branch. And my good friend, Commissioner Eggers, kind of brought this up a couple weeks ago when it came to the pandemic, and it was Barry Burton, our county administrator, and it was our Sheriff Bob Gutierrez who made a lot of those decisions on behalf of our residents. And I think under those incredibly, extraordinary circumstances, personally, I would have liked to have seen two individuals, two leaders who are being held accountable by the people during that incredibly important time for our county, an important time for our residents. And so, I'll kind of wrap it up this way, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your indulgence, but we like to chat in the Senate. And this is an important topic because, quite frankly, I think that this discussion and this presentation, is going to provide this commission with those resources, that knowledge of what it would look like if, in fact, the voters, I want to point that out, the voters are the ones who are ultimately going to decide whether or not they want to see a county executive. The city of Clearwater went down this road a couple of years ago. The voters said, no, we're not interested. So it's going to be ultimately up to those voters. I think a couple of things today that I heard. There was kind of obviously, the mayor is very strongly opinionated on his position on strong mayor, strong executive, county executive. But one thing that I found very interesting with the second presentation was that even if we do have a strong executive, or I should say a county executive, that individual is likely to hire someone like a county administrator. So that level of expertise is not going to be missing. And I think that's important to note. Because, while I've heard and I do greatly respect the opinions of what happens if we get the wrong person? Well, what happens if we get the wrong person as our governor? What happens if we get the wrong person, as our president? Those are really important positions, and rightfully so. They should be elected by the people. And I think that our county administrator, that position, I think brings the same level of importance, the same level of decision-making that's so incredibly important for almost 1 million people in our county. And I believe that position should be ultimately elected and held accountable by the electorate, by the voters here in Pinellas County. I have a lot more notes, but I won't bore you with the rest of those. So, Mr. Chairman, that is my opinion on a county executive for Pinellas County.
Thank you, Senator. Other comments? Commissioner Eggers.
Well, I guess a couple of weeks ago or a couple of meetings ago, I jumped the gun and gave my opinion early on. So I apologize for that. Yeah, it was interesting to hear the two speakers, and I would absolutely agree that the city of Tampa and probably the city of St. Petersburg, both the city of St. Petersburg, over 250,000 people, having a chief executive be an elected person, I think that person controls the outcome of 100% of the electorate. The person that is elected to this position is going to represent 28%, 25 or 30%, somewhere between that, of the electorate. There's a strong city manager. There's only one in our county. So I think the idea that somebody's going to come in here and run the county is not going to happen, first of all. There's too many partners, and collaboration in this county. You can go to the city manager, county administrator meeting every month. They get together and collaborate. They talk. They make sure that at least they understand where we're coming from and where we're going, or where they're coming from. It takes a lot of work to get there. It wasn't always that way. You can go back 20 years, 25 years ago, and it was not really a good relationship. But it takes work and collaboration. In a county like this, it's a must. So I'm definitely supportive of having the professional, developed professional run this. They stay out of the politics of it. We 7 folks, there's 4 of us that, if you look at the county, represent 250,000 people by districts. And so, and then 3 of the commissioners that represent the entire county. So to say that, they have their ear to the ground every 4 years, certainly understand what the wish of the county electorate is. It's ironical that we had that pandemic, and where we got the most criticism was there's too much power vested in the county administrator. You know, that's just too much. It shouldn't be that much power. We, the county, and I kept telling them, well, don't blame him. The county commission ceded that power on a day-to-day basis so that not only was he implementing policy, but he and the sheriff from a public safety standpoint and him from more of a policy standpoint were setting policy too. We couldn't stay meeting every hour of every day as a county commission, so we gave that authority to him, and we could have taken it back. We met with him weekly or bi-monthly, certainly all the time. But again, the ethics part that was mentioned is extremely important. That person is apolitical. They listen to the seven of us, and they can certainly count votes, and they certainly work that way, but they bring their own leadership. They bring their own style. Not every county administrator is the same. I've seen so many good leaders in those positions and some bad ones as well. So it's not, leadership is, whether it's elected or not, exists or it doesn't. So I mean, I certainly, this would be a monumental shift, and certainly 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks is not enough time to even begin to dive into it, in my opinion. And the other thing is, this is not a rapidly growing area. You know, we talked about Hillsborough County. It's a rapidly growing county. We're not. We're growing maybe at 3-4% a year. We're talking about 1.2 million maybe in the next 30 years. So it's not an overly growing county that that the mayor was talking about and how important that was. I mean, I don't, again, I've got some other notes here too, and I don't want to go on too much about it, but I feel fairly strong that the setup in this county, the way this county is designed by cities and population, that it just works the best without having somebody, and he made the comment several times, it's wonderful to have all this power. Well, in this county, you're not going to get very far with all that power, except you have a lot of frustrations. You see the frustrations he had a little bit with the county administrator. Well, you have 24 other leaders. So in any event, to Commissioner Steck's comment, I think it works pretty well right now. We're open to elections every 4 years. So if it's not being done properly, and I said it, you know, we did that approach. If you want to hold us accountable, then the ballot box is coming. And it was close. There were some people that were not happy. And there was a couple of commissioners that came very close to not being reelected. So I think it works pretty well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eggers. Other comments at this time? Yes, Commissioner Strickland.
Appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I go back to one of the questions I posed the mayor about his background and how he came up through the ranks. It's very important for me as an educator to understand that pathway, because I think the mayor, if I'm not mistaken, he said he went to Penn State and got a political science degree. And then I further asked that question because I went and looked at Barry's background. He's the only county administrator I know. So I looked at his background and saw how he came up through the ranks. And he served in multiple roles over his career as a budget analyst, as a director of environmental services. He's made it through the ranks, progressing based on his ability. He's done that over years of service for many, many years, based on his ability to lead in his roles. And so for me, similar to many of the other comments, I don't believe we should change what's not broke. To me, it's a system that works, and I don't want an elected official in that role who doesn't have the background or the pedigree or the educational knowledge that's needed to lead in that particular position.
Okay. Other comments? Commissioner Twitty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciated listening to both of our speakers tonight, and they had some great perspectives. But I feel in this county, being born and raised here and knowing how many municipalities we have to deal with, as Commissioner Grove mentioned, it feels like there's an opportunity for far more political clashes if you have a county mayor that has to then work with all those various city mayors, and partisanship obviously, would come into play. And I worry about, that power shift that then happens in the neutering, so to speak, of the county commission. That is real. That would certainly transfer. And we as voters, I look at it, we've put the county commissioners in place and provided them that authority to make that call on our executive leader, our executive administrator, I should say. And I wouldn't really want to take that away from them.
Okay, any other comments at this time? Commissioner Lipsey Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our colleagues. And I'm certainly grateful for the presentation made today. And just for a matter of record, I am totally comfortable with our current form of government with no changes. Thank you.
Okay, other comments at this time? Mr. Thomas, did Mr. Schwartz provide any comments? I know he said he was going to be out and he had some thoughts. And
I did not receive any on that. I know we were seeking for anybody who wasn't going to be here to provide any feedback, recognizing you're looking for somewhat of a straw poll vote tonight.
Right, and the question is, are we going to move forward with asking our professionals to draft something for further consideration, or are we going to forego that? And so for me, this is a fundamental question about representation. And it is one of the most important issues that any citizen or any government is going to confront. And it's not like cleaning up the charter language. It's not like addressing some smaller things or some procedural things. This is a foundational issue about the form of the government. And there's no doubt, it's indisputable to me, that there are pros and cons on both forms of government. There are things that are great, and there are things that could be better. And a lot of that depends on the people that are, the personalities and the individuals that are called into those positions. From my perspective, Pinellas County has existed for 112 years now, and the citizens have never been asked this question. And I think it's a question they deserve to answer. And I don't think that it's right for me to tell them that I don't think that they're smart enough or good enough, or there's enough qualified people that live here that are capable of governing themselves. And I'm not telling you that that means that I would vote for a strong mayor form of government. I'm telling you that I think that there are a tremendous amount of qualified people that live in this county, from our constitutional officers to our county commissioners to our county administrator, and to numerous other people from the not-for-profit sector, from the business sector. So I think it's something that this county, when you look at the most densely populated counties in this state and in this nation, the majority of them have an elected executive. And when you look at regionalism and you look at the issues that are confronting us in the past and in the future, I think that what Mayor Buckhorn provided was an opportunity for maybe some dynamic representation, direct representation of the voters. Again, there are problems with all forms of government. And we do not have a problem in Pinellas County. I'm not telling you that the Pinellas County government isn't run well. It's run very well. What I'm telling you is that right now it's pretty diffuse, and sometimes it can be difficult to get to consensus. And those are the things that the professionals manage, and they manage them well. And elections have consequences, and now you have folks that are running the management and the day-to-day that may have to change direction on a dime because the commission or the board or the council changed. And that's fine. That's how this government's set up. But in my opinion, I think we should give the voters the opportunity to decide. And so that's why I would support moving forward with it. I can count, so I counted 6 that said they did not want to continue with the conversation. There are only 12 people here today. So is anyone else interested in continuing with the conversation? Commissioner Pasovich?
Yeah, let me just say that, if I'm conflicted at this moment because I've heard, some really valid points on both sides. If all it means to say, yes, we'd like to continue with it is another meeting, I'm all for it. I mean, I'd like to hear more about it. Don't know how I would, vote at the end of the day, but I would be interested in hearing a little bit more about it.
Commissioner Overend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am really thankful we had the experts speaking tonight that we did, and I didn't really expect to have to weigh this so heavily, like in real time in this meeting, because of my background working with and for elected officials. So one thing that I think would have been nice to hear tonight, just as occurring to me in the last 48 hours, would be to hear from a former commissioner from a strong mayor county sort of model. But like you said, like Commissioner Posovic said, I would not be opposed to advancing the conversation to see how it goes.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Marie Brooks.
I would agree. I would like to have the conversation continue and get a little bit more information. I think it's a great idea to have someone who has been an elected official in a municipality that has an elected, so yes.
Okay. Commissioner Steck.
I'll stick close to the microphone this time. In listening to Mayor Buckhorn, and maybe this was just me, but I never heard an answer in regard to conflicts between his position and the county administrator's position when they locked horns. It just kind of kept, in fact, I think he even said they still have some issues because there are two different views on things. Also, I've heard if a position is elected, a person is elected, one of the things they turn around and do is hire a professional manager, which kind of defeats the purpose of having an elected official if you're going to hire a guy to run it on a day-to-day basis. As far as continuing a discussion, we can discuss this all anybody wants as far as I'm concerned. It's okay with me. In fact, one of the things that I got out of the paperwork was the fact that that study that IBM had conducted, perhaps commissioning a study for the county to see how effective the county, because I'm sure there are things that the county doesn't do well, and perhaps a study to look at the way the county's managed as a foundation for whether or not we would go forward with something like this. I'd be open to do that. I'm just concerned at this point, like I say, to thunderhead down the road, put this thing in place, I think is a bit premature.
Right, and we're not asking you to make a final decision tonight, but obviously this is going to be really significant in terms of our workload and the number of meetings, so we got to make a decision tonight on whether we're moving forward with it or not. Commissioner Overend, you had another comment, and then Commissioner Eggers, did you have a comment, or no? I missaw that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to backtrack on what I said a few minutes ago, it would have been nice to have a commissioner from a strong mayor form of county government, but that doesn't influence whether or not I'd like to see this play out, because I'm in agreement with you that it's okay to advance, see what it looks like. And there are also other issues that I think we all read in the report that came out, at least from the CRC 8 years ago, where we're this far in the conversation. I guess it wouldn't hurt us to keep going, do the research, whether we put an amendment on the ballot or not, for future CRCs to take a look at the work that we did, because we always feel pressed for time. So I think that Commissioner Posovic, I'll go back to you again, had brought up early on, for example, past CRCs had looked at consolidation of county services, and they didn't feel, for example, with fire districts, that they had the time left on the clock for them to dig into that. So I'd further be supportive of this just because we've already come this far. And if it's not something that ends up going to the ballot, at least we'd have the work done for a starting point for future CRCs.
And I do think this is going to continue to come up every time, because we do this once every 8 years, and the county's going to always be probably the most densely populated county in the state of Florida, just based on land area alone. And the scarcity of it here. So, okay, very good. Anybody else want to comment before we vote on whether we're going to move forward with having this conversation continue, or whether we're going to end the conversation tonight? Any other comments before we have that vote? Okay, all of this is a straw vote. It's not binding in terms of you voting for this at the end of the day or supporting it or not supporting it. So everyone who's in favor of continuing the conversation, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, I count 6. All of opposed to continuing the conversation? 1, 2, 3, 4. Raise your hand again, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Commissioner Lipsey Scott, did you vote to not continue? That is what she said. So that would be 6 to 6. So what do you want to do? We're missing a commissioner.
Did she vote?
I'm going to assume she voted no. Commissioner Lipsey Scott, if you're there, can you hear me? I mean, she was pretty clear that she was a no, so unless she was persuaded differently. I understand. This is informal, so.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if we're being informal, do we want to try to get
Can you-
an opinion out of Alan?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Commissioner.
I'm not interested in continuing the conversation. Thank
Okay.
you.
So that would be 6 to 6. So if we're going to follow the rules of Robert's rules, that means we're not continuing it, but we are also missing somebody. So is everybody comfortable not continuing it based on a tie vote? All right. Yes, Commissioner Steck.
I assume it could be brought up again if we had more folks in attendance.
Well, the problem is that instead of having meetings to discuss this, we're only going to have 2 more meetings to do the final report. So this would, if you look down at item 7, this would dictate whether we had these final three meetings or not.
Chairman.
Yes.
Just wanted to add a little bit. Commissioners, good evening. To the question, if you're going to move in this direction, it's important to understand that we can't just go down to the county mayor store and pick one option off the shelf and put it together here. You have, as you saw in the other county charters around the state, you have a wide variety of how an elected county executive or county mayor would be implemented. And that would go in different directions based on the direction you would give our office. There are a number of questions we might go through to tease out different pieces and parts of this, how that relationship between the county mayor and the Board of County Commissioners would work out. Would there be an appointed county administrator as well? All manner of things like this. Not suggesting to do it or not do it. I'm just letting you know if there were a decision to go into, say, the next meeting to look at something, I would need to ask a lot of questions at this meeting to get a lot of feedback as to what you would be looking at.
All right. Well, we don't have the benefit of a majority either way, and so I feel like it would be probably unfair to ask our staff to prepare something and to proceed as if we were going to pursue this issue, because like I said, it is an extraordinarily intense foundational issue that requires a significant amount of time and energy and research. Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, I'm glad you made those comments. And the one comment that I made, this is a fundamental change. This is a huge change. And I do think as a launching point at the end of, if we decide not to pursue this, and it sounds like we are, that our comment to the next CRC is that this is the one issue that we started dealing with a little bit late in the process, and we would suggest they do what they want to do, that look at this issue earlier and give more time. And I don't even think it hurts to have any kind of explorations about this over the next 4 years. I'm not quite sure how that's going to look. But again, this is a big deal. The other thing I would say is when we're picking a county administrator, we hire somebody who vets those folks, the ones that have those skill sets to run a county this size. And we see a lot of resumes. We see a lot of interviews. We see a lot of people that have the background, don't have the leadership. And so, but understanding the skill sets and being spoon-fed in a sense from those folks that are in the business of running counties, or running or getting people that run counties. There's a lot to it. That's all I'm saying. And so to say leave it to the electorate, they've voted for county commissioners to make those choices on their behalf. And it's again, you got to take the time to do that. And we find the most frustrating thing at a commissioner level, which, just about anybody out there who wants to run is qualified to do so. But getting the word out to folks about how you compare to you as an elected official is difficult. And this position would even be more difficult because the skill sets that are involved are much greater. And so I just think it's a tall order that I think 2 or 3 weeks doesn't do it justice. So, but anyway, thank you.
Okay. I do want to thank again Manager Brangascio. Thank you so much for being here, and particularly for attending last time and also providing all the background information. That was very helpful. And also Mayor Buckhorn, regardless of how you feel about whether this fits into Pinellas County, I don't think there's any debate that he was a very, very successful mayor, and we were very lucky to have him here, take his time to volunteer to come over here and give us the benefit of his insights and his experience and his accomplishments. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 5A. This is a follow-up on section 5.02 of the charter regarding special laws. We had a significant discussion about that at the end of our last meeting related to some of these special districts and other extra governmental boards or districts that have been created by the legislature. And I understand that Attorney Vos has some hot off the press new information for us that may significantly impact how we move forward on this. So Attorney Vos.
I do, Chairman. Thank you. Commissioners, sorry to be the bearer of bad news. In my exuberance before at your last meeting, I was optimistic we had talked through a way to handle the removal of that list of boards and districts and councils and authorities without breaking anything in the charter. As we were looking at it before, and I provided you a memo just a very few days right after your meeting to get it to you quickly because we had a very short turnaround time. It was after that time, after I'd gotten that memo out to you all, and I did circulate it to the county attorney's office as well, that some other issues started to creep into my mind, some of which I think I was recalling from 8 years ago, some of which I kind of put together after I got the memo out, as to what this revision would break in the charter. Notably, I was focusing, when we were in the meeting before and ran off and wrote this, I was focusing on 502B, the particular provision where we have that list of boards and districts and so on. What was rewritten in that subsection, I think, would not break that subsection. What it breaks is another subsection. It's 502A, all right? And this is, it's a little complicated. Sorry for it being so complicated. I'm going to try to give it to you in the clearest way possible. So we've talked about special acts before. We have two types of laws in Florida: special acts that deal with one particular place and general laws that are of general application throughout the state. It has typically been the case, kind of cycle after cycle, of special acts relating to local governments. The legislature, or in one instance, the Constitution from time to time, converting special acts into local ordinances, either county or municipal ordinances. There's a provision in the Florida Constitution that was put in back when the '68 Constitution was enacted in Article 8, saying all county ordinances dealing with just the unincorporated portions of the county as of the date of that article become ordinances of the county. That's why when you look through Pinellas County ordinances and other county ordinances, you'll see all references to things from the 50s and 60s and so on, that those were special acts, now they're ordinances. They can be changed and so on. That was only retrospective, though. That was only addressing things that had been passed in the past. Didn't deal with stuff in the future. Go on into the future, there were a number of instances where the legislature decided it would be the best idea to clean out a bunch of special acts, make them ordinances. There was one in 1972 that did this for counties and municipalities and school boards all over the state. A big, long one listing hundreds of special acts. Then, with regard to Pinellas County, there was another special act that did something very similar, wiped out a whole bunch of special acts relating to Pinellas County and converted them to ordinances. That was the special act that was your charter. As it was, as you all know, the charter was introduced as a special act of the legislature, and it had language in 502A that wiped out a whole bunch of special acts and converted them to ordinances, except laws relating exclusively to a municipality, the school board, or one of the boards, authorities, districts, or councils listed in subsection B. And then goes on to other laws relating to saltwater fishing and aquatic preserves and so on. You've seen that in the charter there before. So 502A says all of these special acts had to do with all these different boards that were created by special act. They're all converted to ordinances. The county can do whatever they want with them by an ordinance amendment, except this list down here, all right? So there are two things going on with that list. It's not just you can't change the duties or anything like that in B. It's in A. It's saying this is the list of special acts that weren't converted to ordinance, okay? So my language that I put in B works. It's internally consistent in B, but it doesn't work with A. The result is a couple things. Probably wouldn't change the actual end result legal effect with regard to any of those entities, but what it creates is a whole lot of legal confusion for the county attorney's office and for anybody else wondering what actually happened here. Because what would end up happening is if you wanted to evaluate the status of those entities, you would not be able to look in the then current charter to see what's going on. You'd have to dig through the old books and find the special act from 1980. It wouldn't change the legal effect, but it would cause massive legal confusion. And I came to this conclusion, again, after getting this memo out to you very quickly, because we had a very short turnaround time for this agenda, and had a chance to communicate with the county attorney's office, spoke with the county attorney's office, and before I could even start talking, they were telling me exactly what I just told you. And so I said, yep, I already came to that same conclusion. You're exactly right. And we talked about it further. And so I'm very sorry to say I was so hopeful, but I cannot recommend making the change that I provided you in the memo. It would be nice, but it would have very confusing legal effects with not particularly much upside. So my recommendation would be, with regard to your cleanup amendment, to use the prior version of the language where we were just cleaning up everything else and striking an entity that had already been abolished because it's been abolished.
Well, it sounds like we got to the bottom of potentially a very complicated issue, and now we understand more about why some of these defunct organizations, and also many non-defunct, but some defunct, are explicitly named in the charter. And, obviously open up for questions, but my thought is let's paper our report and do another memo that's before the final report's done, over the next month or so. That explains all that, so that when the next people are looking in 2032 or whatever it is and say, why is this board in here? Let's get rid of it. It doesn't exist anymore. Hopefully then they look back at our report and they see, oh, there's a reason why this is here.
And Chairman, that's precisely what I was going to offer to do. I think it'd be a very good idea as kind of a note to the future for 8 years down the line for whoever's sitting in this chair that I'm in right now and for future CRCs to be able to have a clear way. This is what you may not catch the first 7 times you look at it.
Got it. Questions? Yes, Commissioner Steck.
Mr. Vos, if you'll clarify something for me. Don't state laws preempt county laws anyway?
So if you'll recall, and this kind of adds a couple layers of turtles all the way down on it. I was just peeking back at it many weeks ago, a couple months ago now, had a pretty complicated memo that discussed a bunch of different things relating to special districts generally, things created by special act and the hierarchy of all this and so on. So the treatment of these entities is, again, We have a bunch of special acts, including the special act that created the charter, layered upon each other. So to rip it out here and rely on basically the general principle in construing 502A, whatever the state says goes, the question then becomes, the homework assignment for anyone analyzing becomes, but what did the state say when you piece together all the different special acts and all the different little pieces and so on, and run it through all the different analytical tools you would to figure that out. This is stated in precisely the way the legislature stated it, to say, we did all these things except these, and so it's crystal clear on the face of the document for anyone to see and understand. So I would offer to you that applying that general principle to this issue only moves the analytical difficulty a stage back. It doesn't remove it.
Any other questions or comments on this particular item? I know this isn't where we thought we were going to end up on this. And yes, Commissioner Overend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Vose, is it your advice then that we don't alter any of the board names that are no longer in effect or not the correct name that they're referred to today?
Sure. So there is, I do not see any legal problem, and the CRC has done it before without any concern from anyone, to revise the names of any of them. We're still referring to the exact same legal entity. So merely revising the names, I see no legal problem with whatsoever, and removing ones that have been abolished, by the appropriate means by the legislature, I see no problem with that because it doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, thank you.
And so, Commissioner Overend, would that be your suggestion? Or how do you feel about that?
Yes, I think you had stricken one before, and I'm looking at the strike-through version here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it was in a prior memo. Actually, it was in the memo at the last meeting that would have had, we had struck the Pinellas County Industry Council because Pinellas County Industry Council has been abolished by the legislature. And I understand it was mentioned at one of the, or at the previous meeting, that at least one of these entities goes by a different name now. And that may be so, that's their name that they use publicly and so on. From when we were looking through the special acts relating to each of these entities, we didn't see any recent name changes to a different name. So I don't know if that's...
That would be Pinellas County Planning Council. They go by Forward Pinellas. I have no idea if that was just a rebrand.
I don't know if that's just a marketing name or what have you. And it's perfectly, they can call themselves whatever they want, as their kind of branding name, but this is referring to their, technical legal name.
Just take a look at that.
I'll be
That's
glad.
the only
We'd be
one I
glad
know
to.
off the top of my
Sure.
head.
The
Mr. Chair?
Indian
Yes.
Rocks one was changed to Pinellas Suncoast. I believe that was done through statute too. So it was Indian Rocks Fire before, and now it's Pinellas Suncoast Fire District. I want to check on that one just to be sure.
We'll be sure to double check on that. And again, we want to zero in on precisely what the name is, as specified in the latest special act, that addressed it and so on. So we'll double check on that one as well.
Commissioner Overend, then Commissioner Eggers.
Mr. Was the license board for children's centers and family daycare homes, I think, is Pinellas County Licensing Board?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's at least what they call themselves.
Yeah.
Will, you know something about it? Okay. We will go ahead and check on that as well. And actually, we'll go ahead with regard to, just to double check ourselves, we'll check not just the special acts relating to these, but reach out to the organizations as well, just to double check, confirm, hey, is that just kind of a branding name? Cool if it is, but we just need to figure out what we're looking at.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, so on the Pinellas Planning Council, it is a tax entity, so it's still in existence, it still collects tax dollars, and it partially funds the operation of the folks that work on the Metropolitan Planning Organization side, both of which are under the name of Forward Pinellas. So I don't think you can get rid of that. It's certainly still in existence, and it is still a taxing authority. So, but you can, certainly check into it.
Mr. Thomas?
And Wade, you and I haven't had a chance to catch up on this. I know that Commissioner Twitty had assembled a list of at least all the taxing agencies that you had under your constitutional responsibilities in your office. And so I think I copied you on that information. Is that ringing a bell with you?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So we've got some cross-reference there, but I wanted to appreciate the work that Commissioner Twitty had prepared in response to this very question last meeting.
Chairman, that's all I had on
Okay.
that item.
I see on the agenda, review and discussion of compilation of draft charter amendments to date, but there wasn't anything in the backup on that. And we talked about it at the last meeting. So are we still intending to talk about that, or?
That, yeah, there was not backup relating to that. I think it kind of referred back to the same compilation we had in the previous meeting. And I'm glad to, actually, I have Zoom control here. I think I can throw it up very quickly before we move on. Give me just 1 second. See if I can share that up there.
Mr. Chair, as Wade's bringing that up, yeah, what we thought would be helpful, just if there was any additional feedback, we're at the point where we're going to start drafting the actual report. And so if there were any shifts or changes or anything taking place, it's a lot easier for us to know about those ahead of time. Not that I realize that you'll have plenty of time to vote, but as we start putting this to final paper, we want to make sure if there are any things that look different from our previous conversations, it'd be helpful to get some feedback on that tonight.
Yeah, so if y'all could take a look at the screen, I think we went through everything at the last meeting. The only two things that I can think of off the top of my head are what we just discussed. Obviously, looking at the names in 5.02B, and then the county attorney hiring and firing, whether we wanted to make it 8 at one meeting or 9 at one meeting. But that's something we can discuss at the final meetings. Like, I don't think we need to decide that tonight. We can talk about that more. But I didn't really hear any other pending issues or open-ended items that anybody felt like we needed to address or add or revise. But this is your opportunity to let us know if there's anything else on your mind or questions or concerns.
Chairman, one thing I may have mentioned at the last meeting, at least in passing, and it may be helpful if anybody has any thoughts, or staff would be glad to, ourselves or working with the chairman, make a recommendation on potential ballot order. This is an issue that comes up once you get to the point where you've got a bunch of different amendments you're going to run through your final hearing processes on. It's one of the final considerations, and it's a lot easier if we have it basically put together in the way we might think of looking at it when we have the draft final report put together, so we're not sitting doing a lot of Microsoft Word editing effectively at the last minute.
That's something we can probably discuss. So my intent is to continue to have the meeting on Monday, May 13th, to look at what I will hope will be, close to final draft language. Mm-hmm. And then we would have the first proposed hearing on voting on the language on May 23rd, and then the second and final hearing on voting on the language on June 6th. And we would cut out the May 28th and the June 10th that were holds. So we're going to have one more regular meeting that's not the final vote meeting. But at that regular meeting, I would expect us to give our direction to Wade and Doug on the final language that we anticipate voting on May 23rd. Does that make sense for everybody? And does that work for Mr. Thomas and Mr. Bose?
Yes. The only question, having gone through this a couple times, if people would still hold those dates that are in hold pattern, just in case we go through a public hearing and there's a decision that we want to change. That way we're not re-scrambling to get everybody back on their calendars.
Sure thing.
Yep.
We'll just keep them as a hold. Did anybody have a conflict with like the 23rd or the 13th or the 6th? Obviously, a 6-6 vote on the final meeting would not be ideal.
I will not be able to attend the 6th.
The 6th, okay. So that'll be the second. So as long as you can vote the first time around, that would be good.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Same with me. I will not be available on the 6th, but I will be here on the 23rd.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner.
I have heartburn saying this, but there's some talk of a special session around the late May timeframe. So just an FYI.
All right, we may have to
but
keep, so that this is all good, because keep all of your keep all of those hold dates on your calendars, because we're definitely going to want to make sure we have, if we can get all 13 here, so we don't have an even number. I only think there's probably one that's going to, be a split vote, but we want to make sure we get clarity on that, so. Any other comments? I think we're at the conclusion of the meeting, and we're still before 8 o'clock. So I just want to compliment all of you. I think we had a really great meeting tonight. I'm very proud of the work that you all have done, and I just thought it was an outstanding discussion and good for the public record. And if future CRCs want to build on that conversation, they'll be able to. And if not, they'll at least have the benefit of our thoughts and what happened at the meeting and what we heard and what we learned. So again, I appreciate all of you. Great job, and we will see you on May 13th. Thank you.